For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to StratNewsGlobal, and welcome to this special chat on the Indian economy just ahead of the budget. We'll first begin with a look at the world economy, and I have a small graphic here for you just to give you a kind of a short look at what all the issues are that we're going to discuss in this chat. We're going to look at the broad trends in the world economy and how these could impact on India. How is the Indian economy faring in macro and micro terms? What are the challenges before the government? And the digital economy appears to be growing in strength. Is there a structural shift that is underway? My guest for this evening is Anil Padmanabhan. You met him before. He was the editor of The Mint and is currently running the CapitalCalculus, a substack on business and economy. Anil, glad to have you.
Thank you for having me, Surya.
So let's begin with the world economy. What are the broad trends that you see, how these could impact on India?
Surya, we just had the IMF put out kind of brief on the world economy, which they have dialed it down a bit. But the bad news is that the US and China are going to grow much slower than anticipated. Not much, slower than anticipated. But the good news is that for countries like India are expected to do well in this year and the next. So that's a kind of very tight summation. The big concern globally, the macro concern is on inflation. And of course, the whole supply chain disruptions that happened post-COVID are still slowly still on the road to recovery. So it will be some time before the supply chains are restored. So concerns on inflation, supply chain, and growth slowing down. These are the big macro messages coming from the world vis-a-vis India as it runs into the budget.
Mm-hmm. And so what are the macro issues that you see as far as the Indian economy is concerned?
Surya, if you look at the overall macro numbers, India is in a pretty good place, okay, because the growth is picking up. There are very visible signs of slow offtake in credit. There is investment pickup which is happening. And overall plumbing in the economy, thanks to the digital play over the last 10 years, are beginning to kick in. But that's the big picture story, the 30,000 feet view. Drill down, this macro number masks a lot of concerns below, what's lurking below. And a lot of it has to do with two things. One is a legacy of bad habits which we have carried for the last 7 decades, which are manifest in terms of basic underdevelopment issues, which came out so in the open with the health challenge that India ran into in the COVID phase. The other is, the COVID itself has been a kind of real dampener on the Indian economy. The history, we had to shut it down, and all that has impacted the contact economy the most, and which is the service economy, primarily the service economy. And as you know, service is the biggest chunk of our GDP. So if that slows down, there are serious concerns. Now, the slack is being picked up by other sectors, but this problem with the service, the contact economy, and this informal space which it occupies is on terms of jobs. So we have seen a massive erosion of jobs, and which is another big concern. So because of COVID, what we call the new poor, those who have managed to get out of the poverty trap, have been pushed right back in. So numbers vary. Nobody has these estimates because the actual data is not out there, but numbers vary between 100 to 120 million people have been added to the number of poor. That's a pretty big number. That's about a third of the US population, to give you a sense of magnitude. So that, to me, that's one big challenge. So what these economists call, the alphabet soup of theirs, the K kind of recovery. So think of the letter K. So there's one part of India, which is Indian economy, which is recovering pretty well. The other part of the economy, which is not recovering well. I'm referring to that part. So given this backdrop of the job losses, income erosion, savings being eroded, people have basically depended on savings. Only thing that is holding them up at this point is a massive social welfare step up that has happened in the last 2 years. One big example is free food grains for 800 million people. So that I think has come as a big succor, but that livelihood challenge is one big legacy that this will be a challenge to this FM when she readies for a budget, which is I think a few days from now. So to me, how the budget deals with livelihood, or rather signals its concerns on livelihood and carries the process forward, is going to be a very important part of this budget.
So, Anil, this whole issue of livelihoods, could that derail the entire reforms process?
I don't think so, Surya, because the livelihood challenge is not because of economic reforms. The livelihood challenge is because of COVID. The impact that COVID has had on the economy and the kind of domino effect it is having on jobs and a squeezing of incomes, etc. The reforms part are, more of politics. Like let's take the farm laws, for example. It
Yeah.
is not impacting livelihoods. Yeah, one section of farmers feared it would impact them, but largely it was talking about integrating into markets and bringing the market economy into play. So that should not derail it. But yes, they will be conscious about the optics, definitely, because they won't want to, no government would want to be seen that when there's such a serious livelihood challenge that they're going hammer and tongs at talking about market reforms, etc. So the reforms will be there, but the optics will be, I'm sure, under control.
So, I know this is a bit speculative, but what is it that you expect, in terms of maybe, okay, you mentioned livelihoods, what do you expect? I mean,
See, Surya, I think to me this budget, if like you said, we don't know, we're just doing a guess on this.
yeah.
This budget still happens in the backdrop of COVID. So last year, the FM had given the moniker of once in 100-year budget. I believe this year too, it'll be a once in 100-year budget because the livelihood challenge has not receded, it has probably worsened. So
Yeah.
you need to provide some level of cushion to the people of this country and the bulk of the people of this country. So that's a good number we are working with, is that 800 million people are being covered by the free food grains. So that will be
Yeah.
the large universal set that you need to operate with. Obviously, it is not uniform across all these 800 million people.
Yeah.
So it will vary. But the good news is that they have really cracked the code on targeted delivery of public services, whether it is through DBT, the direct benefits transfer.
Yeah.
So that has been sorted out. So in a sense, if they decide that there's a certain target group, certain demography which needs to be targeted, they can fix that problem. I mean, they can address them in a micro manner. To me, the budget livelihood should occupy a large chunk of this conversation, but it has to also continue with all the reform or the transition work that they've been undertaking over the last 7 or 8 budgets. So that process has to continue. It is like I said, it has to be, the optics have to be managed so you don't convey the wrong signals when you're talking to people at the time of the budget. But the reforms should continue, and the government should continue to signal not only to Indian enterprise, but to global enterprise that it is still in play for economic activity. And if, like the IMF says, India is the lone star in terms of economic growth in this year and next year, then that also makes it all the more reason for you to send a very strong signal to the world that yes, we are in business and we are moving gradually towards a rules-based regime, as opposed to the exceptions-based regime that the history of modern India is all about. So these are the kind of signals that the FM should signal in her budget. Besides, of course, I'm sure she'll have lots of surprises for us in her budget. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into it. So I can't trivialize it with just 2 examples.
Yeah. So you mentioned the digital growth, that's happened. Um, is there a structural shift underway in
Oh,
favor of the
absolutely.
digital economy?
Oh, Surya, absolutely. I mean, I am totally I totally believe that India is not just on the cusp, it's in the middle of a massive makeover. And it's a very complex transformation, but I'll try and summarize it for you in very simple terms. Basically, India is laid down new digital rails, which are built around the foundation of Aadhaar. Okay, so Aadhaar is the key identity which is being used to link these digital rails. So whether you look at UPI, which is the fintech backbone, which is powering the likes of all these wallets in this country, and of course all the money transfers that are happening. And by the way, I just saw some stats last night which said that cash to digital ratio is now almost at 40%, which is a excellent move because it was about 10-15% maybe even 3 years ago. So if you have moved up this fast, particularly during the COVID period, is excellent news in terms of the transformation we are talking about. Then Aadhaar was also the key backbone for the new digital rails for COVID. COVID is the platform that was used to vaccinate nearly 1 billion people. And it was done in one nation, one jab. So you could take the first jab in Delhi, in any place in Delhi, and then fly down to Chennai or Mumbai and take the second jab anywhere in Mumbai or Delhi, wherever it's available. So this is the kind of the interoperability at the back end that the tech is providing is the key to what I'm saying are the new digital rails. So now you're looking at a new thing called ONDC, which I think you featured in your show yesterday, which is nothing but like a UPI version for e-commerce. So you're creating a digital rail which will connect every e-commerce agent. It is not just about the platforms, buyers and sellers, but it is going to be a salon or a restaurant or any kind of digital transaction that you do online is going to connect. You have there's a big shift towards cash flow lending for SME space, which is a framework called Oaken, which is about to be launched, or it's actually already soft launch, if I'm not mistaken. Now that is moving away from collateral to cash flow. This could not have been possible without new digital rails. Then I've already mentioned the whole DBT game to you, which is basically look at what they're creating is new highways. And once you create new highways, you can run anything that depends your choice of mobility. On top of that, you can innovate on every highway. You can build clusters along the highway. You can create shops. You can create malls. Think of the new digital rails as exactly like that. It creates this great ecosystem, this great platform for you to innovate on top. So, which is exactly why you're probably going to see scores and scores of unicorns coming out of India. May not be unicorns, but really top of the top class startups. So you have Zoho, which is a bootstrap startup which doesn't depend on VC funding, which is one of the biggest back-end firms in software in the world at this point of time. And few people know about it, but the people in the business know about it. Now, this could not have happened. A lot of this could not have happened unless the new digital rails were in place. So that is where I think the digital rails create a new ecosystem, which is an excellent launchpad for the FM in terms of when she looks at growth, she can look at one new segment. She can add in terms of a menu, looking ahead, like which are the sectors that can grow. I think any sector based linking to the new digital rails will grow very fast. So yes, it is fundamentally transformative.
So when you compare the digital economy in India today with what exists outside, maybe in the West, maybe Southeast Asia, wherever, how do we compare?
I think we are really world class at this point. I will take the example of UPI. The digital rails that India is doing is really path breaking. There are a few countries in the world who are doing a similar thing like UPI, which is Brazil has done it. I think Thailand has done it. There are a few other countries, but you don't see the United States, England, you don't see these countries mentioned in this play that we are talking about. See, the beauty of UPI, let's focus on UPI because almost all of us use UPI. Let's go back to 2015 or 2016. They were doing about like the transactions in thousands, 100,000, 200,000. In December last year, which is the latest number that's available, they cleared 4.5 billion transactions. So you see the kind of digital rail that the UPI provides it has a capacity to create 2 billion transactions a day. So we have not even scratched the surface. So you can transfer from 10 paisa to any amount using UPI. No country in the world today, I mean, barring the countries I mentioned. So if you go to the United States, for example, there's a hegemony. I won't name these companies, there's a hegemony of a few players who take 3-4% of every transaction because they control the gateway. What India has done is democratized it. So what they are doing is they're saying you don't make money as a gatekeeper. You make money by innovating on these digital rails. I think that's the kind of change, transformative change, which is why I said what India is doing and these few developing countries are doing is path breaking because they are talking about masses. They are not talking of a limited segment of people. They're not talking about India's like 1%. 10%. They're talking about India entire population. So let's take the Kisan Samman, the money that was transferred. We are talking about what? Some 14 crore people who benefited from it. So the scales that I'm talking about is possible only with the kind of digital rails that India has put in place, which is exactly why it is world class at this point of time.
Does that make us a more attractive economy when it comes to FDI?
Yes and no. Yes, see, digital rails makes your economy extremely efficient. I mean, it sows the foundation because what happens is there's a massive amount of disintermediation. So a lot of friction goes out of the system. So let's take money transfer. It's something which we all do. So how would we do it previously? I would go to the bank, take out the cash, then come to Surya and hand off the money to him, right? Then we moved to electronic transfer. So I would do an NEFT transfer to Surya. So it was good. It used to work like on real-time basis. But then you had holidays in between, which RBI has done away with. Now comes UPI. And UPI says, like, look, I have to transfer money to Surya right now because he's standing at some store, he needs to pay. So I just use your UPI backbone, your UPI ID, my UPI ID. We do a handshake and boom, my bank has transferred. So what has it done? This fantastic amount of disintermediation, it has reduced friction in the transaction. So it makes us efficient. So instead of Surya standing in a queue, Anil standing in a queue, one to collect, the other to deposit the money, all that is gone. You are using the time more productively. So if I add up all these little, in a cumulative manner, you can see the degree of efficiency that is coming into the Indian economy. It is not, I'm not saying it's going to happen today or something, but this is already being built in, which is why I gave you the DBT example. The savings on DBT up to March 2020 was $1.7 billion. And $1.7 billion is the size of the first COVID-19 relief package. So you see, you got value for money. You've not only saved money, you've created efficiencies in the system. The right person is getting the money. How? You've created an economic GPS. How did you do that? You intersected my Aadhaar with my bank account and my phone. So you created an economic GPS which locked me as the right person. Just like my UPI, your UPI ID and my UPI ID are identifying each other. At the back end is the tech stack which I told you about, Aadhaar and all these various elements to it. And they're all interoperable. So you see, it's not that you have to create a new, a new entity every time. You don't. They're only digital building blocks. So just as kids, we used to get building blocks, so you could build anything you want. So imagine these digital building blocks are similar. So you can build anything of scale as long as you have a vision, you have the tools.
It also tells you something about the idea space, isn't it, in India? I mean, there is something which is, I mean, if you look back from Aadhaar onwards, it's a huge transformation that's happened.
Absolutely. I would say India has found its mojo. So
rather strange that these kind of things we haven't seen in the West, I mean, you're mentioning gatekeepers and all that. It's a bit odd.
See, Surya, that's the beauty of what is happening in India. This is not like a top-down approach. It is a bottoms-up approach. So what they do is, they've used the power of a digital economy to unbundle a complex transaction. So the UPI example that we have been discussing in such detail on the show tells you how you unbundled a transaction so that you could then do anything with it. So it's not just to pay you. I just went to a shop for some for a simple sell service, and I paid them using UPI. So in fact, it was my signal was not working there. So I offered like cash. They said no, we don't take cash. So I think that is a behavioral change.
Yeah.
That where a small shop is refusing to accept cash, they want digital. So what does that tell you? So we are like an incoming tide. You're creating a rules-based economy, and people will not realize it till the tide is totally in. Like you can never say a tide is coming in till it's on top of you, right? So same way, I think we are seeing this digital transformation, behavioral change in an incredible way. And I'm a big fan of a rules-based regime. So, and I think it's great sowing the foundations for a rules-based regime. And a simple experience like today afternoon reaffirms my faith that yes, we are moving in the right direction.
Yeah. On that note, Anil, thank you very much. Looking forward to this budget, and maybe we'll have another conversation after that. Thanks again very much.
Delighted. Thank you, Surya.
And for all of you out there who've been following our conversation, keep subscribe to our YouTube channel. Keep coming to us with your questions, comments, and observations. Follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram. Thank you. Good night.